All right, now we're moving on to Buggy, which is our rear end assembly. So it looks like we're doing sway bars, suspension arms, and C and D blocks. The fact that these the plastic doesn't come clean off, don't cut yourself with a hobby knife. The fact that it's not just a super clean brake and it's nice and flush, that's a little annoying. So making sure that on your suspension arms here, you get any excess off is going to be important to making sure that nothing is binding. And of course, as we build, we will double check all that. And first step is going to be the sway bar. Now in the manual, you will see this is a 2.5 millimeter sway bar, but you can get optional sway bars from 2.2 millimeter all the way up to 3 millimeters. So there is some tuning available with that. And of course, the thicker the material is going to be, the less give that sway bar is going to have. So I'm guessing you'll want to use something thicker on a high traction track or something of that sort, where you don't need too much suspension in your corners there. So I'm just going to loop this through these holes, and then it looks like we need to go ahead and use the sway bar bushings, and there are optional size bushings as well, and it looks like the kit includes 3 millimeter, but this you can use to adjust the deadband, or I guess how much play is in your sway bar here at this particular point. So I mean, looser is going to be more for your rougher track conditions, and on the sway bar here you can see in the middle, well, you probably can't, but it does say 2.5 millimeter. So we'll take our 3 millimeter bushings and we will slide that on the sway bar and up into its hole. Try to press that in there a little bit. Perfect. This one bushing is not wanting to go into its home super well. There it goes. Just kind of had to snap in there. Might have been a little plastic from the factory that was on there that was just making it go in a little bit tight. And now we are going to go ahead and get these little plastic pieces that mounts right up to those bushings we put on. I don't know what these are called. The manual does not. The manual does not say what these are called. It just says optional bulkhead something something. On the very end, if this will focus, it doesn't look like it's going to, but there is a little kind of like cut out sort of notch. So that's just something to be mindful of here. And it looks like we want that to be facing to the rear, as far as I can tell. And I think I'm going to try to do what I saw Combustion RC do. There are set screws that need to go in here, no thread lock. There are set screws that we need to go in here, and I'm going to put those into these pieces before I slide them on and just get them started, because I think it'll be a lot easier. All right, now here we want to try to make sure we're centered up. Make sure our sway bar is centered as much as possible. And it might be easier to get it centered up if you put this other plastic piece on the other side as well. All right, so I don't love that part of the build. But that's done. That should hopefully be easier on the front, A, because we had already done it, and B, because we won't have the wing mount to try to work around to try to hold those pieces on. So that is step E1. Now step E2 is taking our rod ends and our stabilizer ball and our rod end ball and getting those on. Now I get to use a shock tool for the first time. I've never used one of these, and we're going to use this to put the balls into the rod ends, and this is what's going to attach our sway bars to the suspension arms. So first things first, I'm going to get the balls. We have one that goes on top, and there's a set screw on here because this is what secures the sway bar to the rod end. Kind of set it on top there, make sure it doesn't fall off. Take our tool and hope this doesn't break when I squeeze. Oh, look at that. Hey, we did it. Woo! All right, I'm going to take the bottom ball, which does not have the set screw thing. Boom. Hey, look at that. We didn't screw that up. That's good. I love it. It's very satisfying. So now it looks like we just secure these onto the sway bar with a little bit of thread lock. I'm going to get this started, and then I am just going to get this rod end flush with the end of the sway bar here. And I think that'll be okay. I want to make sure that set screw is in a spot where it's accessible also, so I'm going to have it facing outwards a bit. I'm going to give that a little bit of a snug there. Alright, make sure that moves up and down. Nothing feels like it's going to bind. That's all good. That's step E2. Now step E3, it looks like we are putting on our C block. And our C block is going to be going towards the inside of the car, just under our drive shaft piece here. So we are going to take our C block, and the C and D block are both included in the same bag, and they are different. So you are going to use the one that does not have these extra tabs that you can see right here. You don't want that one, so we're going to take this one. As you can see, no tabs there. This does mount a certain way, so double check what your manual shows. All right, so now for step E3, we are putting the pills in the C block. It comes with a ton of these as tuning options, and you can tell kind of the angle or the offset or whatever that they're using by the amount of dots on them and where those dots are. Stock configuration is going to be one singular dot in the middle of the pill. So we're going to get two of these off. Man, they really need to come up with a better way just to get these things to snap off clean. If that ends up being one of my biggest complaints about this build, then it definitely could have been worse. All right, so our pills are going to push into the C block. No problem there. And I believe our hinge pins for the suspension arms actually slot into these pills. So we need to make sure they are the correct way. Once you've determined the correct screws, go ahead and put them in. And this tab right here, that needs to face the bottom of the car. And of course, hand tighten. All right, our C block is on. Now it's going to get interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and get the droop screws put into the bottom of these arms. So now with that screw in there, we can see from the bottom that droop screw sticks out, and we can see that we can adjust that with a 2.5 millimeter driver. So that's kind of neat. All right, so now with that, we are going to put the hinge pin bushings on both sides of each arm. Really got to push them in there. There you have a bit of a tight tolerance. We'll use the workbench to help us out, and as far as I can see, the amount of resistance here is normal. All right, now we'll go ahead and flip this up, and we are going to put our hinge pins into the pills, and then we should be able to shove these arms on. And the shock mounts, I believe, should be facing the rear of the vehicle, facing the wing. So now that we have the hinge pins on there, we should just be able to slide that right on. Now the left one. All right, and now we are going to use the last M4 by 10 millimeter screw to secure the D block with center pills yet again. Push that in, push this in. Turn it around and just double check that these are both center pills, and they are. And then we should go onto the hinge pins. similar to what we did up front. Might need to help get them to line up. I don't know if this is normal. I hope it is. But we got a little bit of play in here. Now, we have to secure our sway bars yet. So why don't we do that before we screw those things down. And hopefully these sway bars will line up with their mounting points. And it looks like we might be okay there. Get the holes in the balls to line up. And now we use these long cap head screws to secure the sway bars onto the arm. 2.5 millimeter, just like much of the hardware on here. It's kind of an angled hole, and you obviously want to make sure that you can line that up with the ball. All right, and we are going to take our 2.5 millimeter driver and just make sure that that is good. I'm not expecting that to stop by the looks of it. Okay, so still some side to side there. We will see what happens here now that we have one screw left, and that is to secure our D block. Nope, we still have it. So we'll hand tighten, make sure we are tight on the C block again. We are. That is a completed rear end. I am going to check with my buddy Combustion RC to make sure that this, I mean, I know you can hear it. We're going to check to make sure that that is okay. But otherwise, nothing's binding. Everything moves freely, just as we need it to. And we're sitting good. Of course, our sway bars are doing their job. Both arms are moving together. We did it. We did it correctly. As long as that, that play in there is okay. And I'm sure once the shocks are on here, and everything else is complete, we won't have to worry about it, but I'm still going to double check. So, that is bag E. Our rear end assembly is complete. Now we're going to move on to bag F, which is our rear hub and camber link. All right, bag E is done, so now we are on to bag F, which is going to be our rear hub and our rear camber links. And then our rear end is complete. All right, first things first, we are going to go ahead and we are going to put our bearings into the hubs, and it looks like these can only go one way, so the bearings with the flange go on the outside, snap in like that, and the non-flanged larger bearing goes on the inside, and that seats in there. And flange bearing on the outside, other one goes on the inside. Okay, now we have these camber link inserts or something of the sort. I'm not sure I guess what you call them. You can use 2-hole, 3-hole, and 5-hole. Per the manual, we're going to use 5-hole. I'm guessing it's going to be the same up front, but I don't know. And we're going to make sure we put these in correctly. So the 3 holes should be on top. And those take a little bit of force to press in, so we have the 3 holes on top, the 2 holes on the bottom on both sides. So we'll do the same thing on the other hub. There we go. That snaps in. And that snaps in. So we got those on there. Next we are going to take our drive shaft, and these are universals, and it looks like we're going to slide it through the bearings, and it might need to, okay, nope, that one slid through pretty easily. Something that's different, similar assemblies in this build so far have had shims over the bearing, but it doesn't look like that is the case here. We are going to take our hex, and it looks like put it right through, and there is a hole. Focus, focus. There is a hole on top of the hex, and there is a hole in the end of the drive shaft here. So we want to make sure those holes line up, and then we will stick a pin in there. Now this pin has a flat spot, similar to what we've seen before. So we need, I don't know if you can see the flat spot in this, we need to face out. And I'm going to use pliers here just to make sure that that flat spot is where I need it to be, and it's not. So we need to rotate that, and I think that is how I need it to be, assuming it doesn't move. So I think I can actually stick my hex down there and make sure we're good. This set screw is actually 2.5 millimeters, so this is a beefy boy. Use some thread lock here. Oh, that's too much. And we go straight through the hex just like this. Set screw is going to hit that flat spot in the pin. We're going to tighten that down as much as we can. Well, of course we're not going to break anything, but so we have our hex on there, drive shaft, and everything is secure. We'll spin, make sure that spins freely. Bearings feel smooth, everything is hunky-dory there. You love to see it. You love to see it. All right, now we'll actually just go ahead and do the same thing on the other hub, and then that part of the process is out of the way on both sides. For some reason that I don't really understand, the pin is accessible from 2 different sides of the hex, so if you're not careful, oh, where is it? There it is. If you're not careful, you can see the pin right there on the bottom of the hex, then you can see it on half a rotation. I don't know why. And now we need to attach these to the rear end. Set those to the side for a second. All right, so we're going to start on the left side here. So what we are going to do first is take these hinge pin bushings, and they are going to go on the outside of each arm. Those do take a little bit of pushing in there. So now we're going to go ahead and try to put the hub assembly on, and we have our hinge pin bushings in the arms here, and now we also need to put our 2 millimeter shim towards the front of the car and put a pin through. So let's do that. All right, and then followed by our hub. So there are 2 holes on the bottom here, and the stock configuration is saying to use the top hole, so we are going to do that. And now we need to try to put our 1 millimeter shim in here somehow and hope we can catch it with the pin. That's going to be a bit of a challenge. What is a good way to do that? Are pliers going to help at all? Not sure. Maybe, maybe not. Or can I try to wedge it in there and just hold the hub against it until the pin is in? Aha, we got it. All right, so 2 millimeter shim in the front, 1 millimeter shim in the back, and now that is going to be secured by 2 lock nuts. I can tell that a challenge that I'm going to have is I don't have, I believe, 2 drivers that are the same size, so we will see how this goes. I might have to use pliers on one side and a driver on the other, and I'm probably going to scratch these lock nuts, which I really, really don't want to do, but I don't really have a good option. All right, and it looks like this is going to be a 5.5 millimeter driver. This is far from ideal, but we are using an adjustable wrench and a rag. Far from ideal, but we got to do what we got to do. Don't like that the coating on these lock nuts is so weak, because it is very easy to scratch them. So not super stoked on that particular aspect, but what do you do? We got a little bit of play in these hinge pins. Like I said, hopefully that's fine. And once those camber links are on, it shouldn't hopefully be a big deal. All right, so step F3. Now we're working with camber links, baby. Let's go. We are almost done with this rear end, and I honestly can't wait to get this part of it done. All right, so first things first, we need our rod ends here, and we need to pop balls into them. There's a tip in here. It says to use a little bit of grease on the ends to make this easier. So I don't know. Let's give it a shot, I guess. I don't know. So I'll just take a little bit and put it on each end. I'm really just doing a tiny dab. I'm using my finger to kind of spread it on the threads there. All right, now we're going to try to get these on. So I'm just going to try to start them by hand, and I think I'm probably going to have to use some tools. Sort of hard to tell when it's straight. One of these ends is threaded the opposite direction, which I think we've maybe figured out. We are still struggling. All right, it looks like we should be okay as of now. All right, now according to the manual, we need the inside of each end to be a certain distance apart. And in this case, it's 43.25. That is 60.5, so we got a ways to go. You know what's crazy is I can feel heat on this link. All right, let's check this again. Somehow we barely made a dent. We have found 43.25 millimeters. All right, it was a lot of struggle and a lot of turn and measure, and then turn one this way and turn the other end the other way. But 43.25 millimeters in between the insides of both rod ends on both of these. So now we get these mounted to the car. So on the rear hub, we want the camber link to be in the, if you're looking at the vehicle from the back, you want the camber link to be mounted on the upper right hole. So then we need a washer and a screw to come in from the back towards the front. And then a nut. Now we need our 5.5 millimeter driver, and we can use our screw gun. And just hand tighten that a bit. They want this on the most inside number 2 hole. Inside middle. So I'm not really understanding how they want this. So you take your screw, put it through, make sure you put it through the right one, of course. And we'll verify that we are doing that, like so. I didn't do that right, did I? Nope, the link goes on the inside. Now this is goofy. They want this countersunk washer here on the inside. The lighting sucks, I know. But, so they want a washer, this countersunk washer, with the indent facing towards the link, and then the nut. Maybe that makes sense, maybe that doesn't. I have no idea. And similarly, we will fasten that down. Make sure that all moves freely. It does. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, and it feels like it's taken forever, but we have everything. We went through, we built our differential, we got our gearbox, shock tower, wing mount, shock standoffs, body mount. We have our suspension arms, sway bars, camber links, drive shafts, our hubs, our hex assemblies, everything. And of course, double check, as I've been saying this whole time, double check that everything rotates freely. You don't feel any binding, everything's spinning, even from full droop to full compression. Nothing's binding, nothing's rubbing. Move the arms up and down, hold it in the middle, move the arms up and down, make sure everything feels like it is not binding, nothing's grabbing. We have a completed rear end. That's bag F, and now it's time to move on to the front end assembly.